As you've guessed, Winston Churchill, in my mind, is the greatest human being of the 20th century. But have you ever thought what created someone like this? I read biographies, nearly 7,000 now. I've read every book that's ever been written about him, every book that he's written. I have his home movies, I have his voice telling me of all of his exploits on cassette tape, but I couldn't find out what created the man. Until one day I found a letter he sent to his mother when he was in his early 20s fighting a war in India. And this is what the letter said. Dear Mother, we're out on horseback today on military exercise and we were ambushed by the enemy. Many of my comrades fled in terror. But rather than flee, I spun my pony around. I rode it straight into the face of the enemy. I withdrew my revolver. I dispatched 2 of the enemy immediately. I spun it around again. I dispatched 2 more. I was as cool then as I am now writing this letter to you. Nary a bullet touched my pony, my tunic, or my person. I believe I was preserved for higher things. And there are people here in this church tonight that God has preserved for higher things. There are people that have been divorced, there are people that have been bankrupt, there are people that have been ill. You've had all manner of things happen to you, but God has preserved you for higher things. You've got dreams inside trying to get out and you keep pushing it back and pushing it back and pushing it back, but you need to look for signals and ignore the cost. I had diphtheria, I wasn't supposed to live, but I looked for signals and ignored the cost. My oldest son said to me once, he said, Dad, he said, I wake up at night sometime and wonder where we would be today if the American people hadn't prayed and sent Billy Graham. He said, I can't go back to sleep. Look for signals and ignore the cost. Or at one time I'd done something that was extraordinary and the media came in and it was the first time that it ever happened, and after the media interviews were over, I went out in my backyard of my home under a huge eucalyptus tree that had been there for 150 years. I sat by the swimming pool. It was a summer day. There was no wind. I said, Lord, if this is the big deal, you might just as well take me into heaven. I don't want to spin my wheels for another 40 or 50 years. I thought you promised me that I'd change the world for 300 years. So if this is the big deal, I looked above me and I saw a huge bough. I mentally calculated its weight with its water content, would have weighed 3 tons. I said, if this is the big deal, you might just as well let that branch land on me and I'll be in heaven in a second. But there was no wind. I walked away and the sun was shining. Down it came. It crushed the chair that I'd been sitting in. It crushed the concrete under the chair that I'd been sitting in. And pushed an iron feet 2 feet into the hard-packed earth, and I reset my priorities. Look for signals and ignore the cost. Some of you have been in accidents. Some of you have had all manner of things happen to you, and you're not watching the signals. God has preserved you for higher things. Well, I look at this man called Caleb. He invited the responsibility of leadership. You see, you are God's rescue squad. You are the carriers of dreams. You are the empire builders of tomorrow. Caleb knew what he wanted and he expected to get it. What is this mountain that you want? Caleb had a good self-image. People say to me, what is the biggest problem you've ever had and how did you ever handle it? I've still got that problem. Every morning I have a shave and I look in the mirror and I see this idiot looking back at me. I'm my biggest problem. But Caleb had a good self-image. He said, I'm as strong as 85 as I was at 40. What is this mountain you want? The other thing was, he had a positive mental attitude. You see, you must always have a futuristic look. Motivation comes with a sense of the future. They said there are giants in the land. He said, good, that means they're big. They're too big to miss. You know, motivation is personal. Nobody can get in your mind and your body and act it out for you. You cannot catch it like a common cold. Faith without works is dead, and dead men are not active. And faith is the key to the door to the supernatural. Faith is the currency of heaven. Probably the greatest business leader of the 20th century, the greatest Christian business leader of the 20th century, was Robert Letourneau. They wrote a book about him called Mover of Men and Mountains. He was a big man with a gruff voice, and he was going broke for the third time, and he was in his drawing room working out ways to do bigger machines. He got a knock on the door. He said, "Come in." His attorney came in. He said, "Yes." He said, "What do you want?" He said, "Well, sir," he said, "the creditors are in the parlour and they want their money." He said, "You'll have to wait for a while, but they'll get it." "Well, sir," he said, "they've asked me to persuade you to close everything up and sell it off and they'll let you keep your house." He said, "What'd you tell them?" He said, "I told them I would persuade you to do that." He said, "You're fired." So, "Sir, I've worked for you for 17 years. He said, "Yes, and you know nothing. You're fired." He said, "Why am I fired?" He said, "Young man, I've said all my life I'm in partnership with God." You ever heard of God going broke? You're fired. And he bounced back and gave away another 100 million. What is this mountain you want? When I first came to America some years ago, back in 1977, I saw the Statue of Liberty, and I marveled at what I saw. And I saw the great statue, and it had the words underneath it, "Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame. With conquering limbs, astride from land to land, here at our sea-washed sunset gate she'll stand, a mighty woman with a torch."
Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here at our sea-washed sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor that Twin Cities frame. "Keep, ancient lands, your storied pomp," cries she with silent lips. "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my light beside the golden door." Emma Lazarus.
I marveled at this great country when I first came here. I wondered at its people. The first call I made home, they said, "What is it like?" I said, "It's big and it's beautiful." And people asked me, "Why do I keep coming back?" Well, you saved our nation during the 40s. The Japanese had already printed the currency to take over Australia, and you sent a man called General Douglas MacArthur. Your grandfathers and great-uncles shed their blood for our soil. I wish you could know how much we love you for that. Then you sent a young man called Billy Graham with wavy hair and a loud tie. And he said, "I want you to get up out of your seat, give your life to Christ. Your friends will wait on you." And we gave our lives to Christ. And it's through you, the prayers of the American people. And then what would I do when I came to Christ and I didn't know which way to turn? Well, I got some American self-help books. Frank Bector's How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success. Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, The Power of Positive Thinking. And it was you, the American people, that changed my life. And I'll keep coming back until there's no breath left in me. I was on television some years ago, and they were flying in a guru, an atheist who supposedly was going to tear me to shreds. When the makeup was on and we were walking into the studio, the crowd was clapping, and the studio manager took me by the arm and he said, "Mr. Daniels, there's a step, the lights are going to be bright, I don't want you to fall. I'll hold your arm as you take that first step. They're announcing you now, you'll have to go in. By the way, there's a change." I said, "What is a change?" They said, "Well, they don't have one person debating with you now, they have 4. Well, immediately I knew they were in trouble. They said, "Could you give us a definition for success?" I said, "Yes, the willingness to bear pain." I didn't say be a pain. I said to bear pain, but you've got to get out of the comfort zone. You've got to move into the pain arena. Oh, it wasn't a very difficult debate. Success is a price, a payment, the exchange of sacrificial commitment and personal discipline in mental, spiritual, physical and time output. And yet so many honest and dedicated people with character and intelligence would never lie on a commitment to anyone else, but continually, persistently, habitually adopt what we call a pseudo-rationalization to themselves and break commitments by way of pseudo-rationale, thereby pushing themselves lower in their own esteem. Have these Christians that say, "Well, I'm waiting on God." Hey, He's in front, He's waiting for us. I mean, some of these cliches we have. Well, God has closed the door. Kick it down. There's nothing capricious in God's nature. He will not give you a dream without giving you the ability to fulfill that dream. Paying the full price means a commitment to excellence and learning how to excel in dimensions that we have never known before in our lives. What God has given to you to do, you must know your stuff inside and out. Saturate yourself with it. There is nothing that will put a spring of confidence in your walk and in your performance like being sure that you definitely, concretely and specifically know what you're doing.